Welcome to the K2 Sales Podcast. I'm your host, Karen Kelly. Every week, I'll be sitting down with a sales executive where they'll share their stories and experiences that produce game-changing results. Let's be honest, sales can be a tough game. I'm sure at some point, we've all delivered a less than stellar demo, been ghosted by a client or two, and sometimes maybe we did more talking than listening. And that's where I can help. The stories and insights our guests share can be applied to your own business, your territory, or with your team, so you're not reinventing the wheel. Our weekly tactics and strategies help you get out of your head and start creating your own path towards game-changing results. Welcome back to the K2 Sales Podcast. I'm your host, Karen Kelly. Now, many sales professionals and sales leaders, we've all been through many negotiations in our career. And some entering sales, maybe you're just starting to go through them. But when we go through negotiations or when we think about them, what comes to mind? And it's usually high stake, high pressure. There's a lot riding on it here, whether it's, size of contract, pricing increase, duration. And then there's, what happens if we don't get what we want and we have to go back to our boss and tell them. And, there might be a little bit of shame there. And all these things add up to, invite us to stay in this perpetual negative cycle. And so my guest today, Gaetan Pellerin, is a negotiations coach, and he's also an executive coach, and he's the author of Mindful Negotiations. And he really breaks apart negotiations in a way that is unique to corporate, especially. And he really talks about how to break the pattern and break the cycle of speed, where we're operating at such a quick pace, we're reactive, and we're not even really present in the negotiation. We're not hearing what our audience is saying. We're not considering where these objections, where these blocks are coming up from. And in order to do that with them, we have to shine the mirror on ourselves. And he has a 4CU methodology that really walks you through that. And having read the book, I can say that this methodology really does apply to life. It really does sharpen your awareness muscle that I think when you're aware, especially in negotiations, your senses are heightened. You're more in tuned to your own behaviors, your own emotions. What's triggering ego here? Like, why, when they said that, why did I go into this fight or flight? What made me anxious? And what Gaetan says is really look at, there's an underlying emotion here or story that's fueling this that might be from, your childhood, your high school, but it's giving a lot more weight than it actually deserves. And you're bringing this into the negotiation with you. And then you might be beating yourself up about it. So you're in this cycle, and he just forces you to slow down, connect with yourself, check in, and be like, why is this actually happening? So we talk about so many things from the corporate culture, sales leaders, how this applies to them, their role, negotiations, sales rep, how to really prepare and anchor yourself and center yourself in advance, kind of anticipating the emotions that you're going to experience yourself, but also really taking that other person's perspective that too often we don't do. So when you're preparing for negotiation, we're thinking about, our walkaway points, our must-haves. But have we considered, what the emotional connection is for our audience? Like what's important to them? What do we think their walkaway points are so that we can have a meaningful conversation where we're not leading with ego and fighting up here and actually nothing coming out of it. So look forward to sharing this with you. I'm sure you're going to take away a lot of nuggets and even just, really slow down. And what I would do is just invite you to look at how this can apply to your life, whether it's in negotiations, whether it's in one-on-one coaching with your team, whether it's with your family, and just say like, where is this coming from? Why did I react so strongly or so negatively to that? Because there's something else driving it. And when we can become more aware, that's the first step. Then we can dig into it, dig into the curiosity. Where is this coming up? So look forward to hearing any feedback. If you enjoyed this, please give us a like, a comment, and let us know what you liked about it. Because I thought it was amazing. And having been through the negotiations many times in my career, I think a lot of times, the parties were definitely operating in ego. So how can we pull it back to really be mindful in the moment? Try it out next time in any of your internal or external or family or friend, any kind of interactions in general, and let us know how it goes. Thanks for watching. So just before we hit record here, Gaetan, we were talking about, the difference between, I guess, negotiations and mindful negotiations. And the question I'd asked you is, do you think if someone had asked you about even not writing a book, but what your thoughts are on mindful negotiations years ago, what would you have thought just based on your belief at the time being in corporate and doing what you did? What do you think your answer would have been?
Hi, Karen. Nice question to break the ice here. I think when I was younger, I was ego driven. I wanted to have promotion after promotion. It was never enough. I was successful. I was climbing the corporate, and it's almost like I wanted more, and I wanted more, and I reached my dream job at one point. I was a VP global sale. I thought I was my dream job, but I hated it because of the politics, because of the behind the scene. So I'm not sure if that concept of mindfulness or mindfulness negotiation will have triggered anything else from me than a thought about, oh yeah, it's there, but it's not for me, or it's too much, Zen or something like that. So it probably won't have the same impact. Maybe I was not open to that perspective, Karen.
Yeah, I think that's interesting, and it sounds like it's also that environment. Like, you might have been, but the environment you're surrounded by was probably not, and like you said, those woo-woo words and, "Oh, no, we have to get in touch with our feelings," and like, people I can't believe we're actually saying that still in this day and age. But, it sounds like, you on your own independently, you might have come to that conclusion or that, illumination, but when you're in corporate and you're climbing the ladder, like, you kinda gotta look and sound like everyone else, which is sad. But if you're an outliner and you think differently, who knows, if you're gonna be up for that next promotion.
Yes. And the first step about mindfulness is to be aware that there are other things, other behaviors, other way of being. And for most people, Karen, they are beyond that level. It's unaware, they are unconscious. They behave the way they behave because this is the way everybody behaves, like you just said. This is the way to get a promotion. You talk to your friends, you talk to other people, it's being reinforced. But most of the time, people are not aware that they behave in a way that it's not helping them on the long term. And it's also the next step. The next step. People are getting a promotion. I need another one. I need a bigger house. I need a nicer suit. Um, but if people are not aware, we cannot blame them because you cannot change if you're not aware of what's happening. Once the awareness is there, now you can sit down and can really work with what's going on and understand what's under the cover.
I love that, and think about oh, just awareness. I mean, that's the first step, and then change will come about. But like, I think the stat is 95% of what we do is in our subconscious. So we're just going through the motions. And even, there's times I get to where I'm going and I'm like, I don't even remember. Like, I've been driving for 20 minutes and I
Oh,
think, did I
same.
like did I fall asleep there or what was it? The car took itself. So I just think we go through life in that constant trance almost. And then you think about negotiations when it's high stake, high risk, ego driven. If we're unaware, like, we're just going through the motions. And so let me just back it up there. So based on that, maybe give us a little bit of insight about, like, why is mindfulness it is important across the board, but why so much in a negotiation setting?
Yeah. Well, the basic part of it is most of us, Karen, we behave from our ego. And our ego, it's our unconscious reacting survival structure. Back in the days where men were fighting with lions about, am I eating you or are you going to eat me? Ego, the reaction, the survival skills was very, very helpful. Unfortunately, that ego sits in our oldest portion of the brain that we call limbic brain or reptilian brain and never evolved. So back in the days, our nervous system was taking over us to protect us, right? Today, ego see almost any situation as a threat to our survival. So when we go into the negotiation, while negotiating with somebody, that means I'm risking to lose. I'm at risk to lose something. So my reflex, it's coming up and it's like, I'm going to go to war. I'm going to win because it's about me, my self-esteem. It's about having control over you or having power over you. So entering or even preparing for a negotiation triggers a lot of very old emotion, all about survival. And when we're not aware of it, we're going in with the only focus about me.
Hmm.
And if it's true, that means I win, somebody else has to lose. But we don't really care about that because we're protecting ourselves. And when in negotiation, we see that all the time. Somebody are trying to leverage their source of power the maximum they can, but they don't put themselves in the other party's shoes, and they are shocked like the other person doesn't accept their proposal or it takes forever to get to an agreement. So now imagine, Karen, two people in their ego negotiating with one another. It's like there's a wall between the two, and it's all about who has the most leverage, right? In politics, it's all about ego, right? It's blackmailing, it's threat, it's all about if you don't do what I'm telling you to do, this is what will happen. In negotiation, it feels exactly the same. And the worst in that is because of our ego, we're not learning. When we're done with the negotiation, we're not sitting down to recap what happened. Where did I lose control, or and how did I react? Because our ego is telling us, "You're good, you got it. Next time, we know how to do that." So it's kind of a fake reassurance, if you want, and we always repeating the same pattern. We show up, we're not prepared, we are reacting, we don't learn, we do all the same thing all over again.
Oh my gosh, that's a perpetual negative cycle.
It is, but and you can learn new skills, right? And you can improve your game a little bit, but negotiation, people think it's all about logic, structure, and methodology. And don't get me wrong, because those are really helpful. But in all my years about being a negotiator, observing negotiator, I realized that there was missing an element. Was missing. It was not about the structure. It was not about the skills, but it was about people's behavior or my own behavior that was driven by an emotion. For example, the fear of losing the deal. I'm coming with a bad news for my customer, a price increase. There's no inventory. God knows supply chain those days are really, really fragile. And I'm coming in and fear is taking over my ability to be confident, right? Fear is taking over my ability to be clear. And what's happening? And I use language that don't support me, and it just go up like a snowball effect.
Hmm. And from reading the book, which I loved, and we're definitely going to talk about specific in the book, is you think about that fear of whatever they're sharing, whether it's a pricing increase, the supply chain, all very real information that sales reps have to share with their clients. You know, what I liked about the book is that it highlighted that there's an underlying fear. It's pulling from something else in your life. Whether you had fear in as a child, there's fear there, and I think when what you talk about is just saying like why is fear carrying so much weight here? Like what else is contributing it? Obviously there's fear in what I'm doing, fear about going back to my boss and saying I lost this or all that other fear, but you're adding additional weight to it and leaning into that and go like why? Because I think when you get clarity as to what else is fueling this, you realize I just added a lot of undue unnecessary fear here that I projected it onto my audience that they might have actually been like, you know what, that's 2%, that's standard, we'll sign. But the reaction, they didn't do that because I attached so much baggage from my own past that I'm unaware of.
It's fascinating because the way we behave today, it's because of our personality. And Karen, by the age of 3, we're done. Our personality is fully developed by the age of 3, meaning that the environment where we grew up, mom and dad, and maybe grandma, grandpa, has a lot of influence on us. Church, the society, the close knit group where our parents were growing up as a young adults, young parents. So unfortunately, the way we behave today, it means that it's our reaction to past events. So if I'm afraid to deliver bad news, well, maybe because I want people to like me, or I don't want to upset them. So I really want to be able to come and you love me, you like me, great. I don't want to upset you because I just want to be accepted.
Hmm.
All those behaviors are there, right? And there's always a reason versus somebody else or something else. So most of us were driven by image. I want to please. I want to avoid displeasing people. I want to be seen. I want to be heard. I want to control you, Karen. I want to, but it's always me in interaction with somebody else. And here's the magic in everything. When I consult with my customers and we rehearse their first few phrases, I'm asking them, tell me what you want to tell your customer. And they go without fear because I'm not their customer. And they're super confident. And my point of view, my coaching for them is like, record yourself because you came confident, you were not in fear, and that's the way you should talk to your customer. So basically, is there a way we can eliminate that fear so we can be more natural, more confident? And that's the beauty of mindfulness negotiation is can we behave differently without our emotion controlling us?
Yeah, I love that. And what I was just thinking as you were saying that is just being aware of our own behaviors and understanding like why am I doing that? Why am I leading with fear? And I can tell you since I read your book, I'm really questioning myself more, like really understanding where's this emotion coming from? Like why did I react the way I did? But imagine that heightened awareness that if we can tap into that. But how many people are able to do that to the person sitting across the table from them? And when they fling off this proposal or they reject a proposal, not firing back, but just being mindful about them and go, huh, I wonder where that rage is coming from. I wonder where that need to control. But and so my question to you is once you get, comfortable and almost automated with going through this systematic check with yourselves, do you then instruct or invite your clients to do the same on their audience?
That's a good question, and I'm not sure if the other person will be open. But first of all, when you get to the point where you are aware of your own reaction, what you're currently doing is slowing down time. And it feels like a second, you have a lot of clarity, a lot of insights about, okay, so it's not personal. The other side has their own emotion, but I'm going to coach that person to just slow down. I'm not going to tell them, well, you should do mindfulness,
Hmm.
but in my own action, I'm going to coach that person to behave differently, right? If I go to a meeting and somebody's yelling at me, there is no way I can win that if I yell back. There's no way, right? But if I'm just acknowledging the pain, because people that are emotional, they have pain, or they're not getting what they want, or there's something. So I think the best coaching tool is to have empathy for the other person. And actually, this is what they train you in customer service, right? It's like I share your pain. I understand how you feel. If I was in your shoes, I'll probably feel the same way. So empathy toward the other, it's kind of disarming, right? If I'm angry and I'm coming and Karen, you say, Gaetan, I understand you are angry. I'm sorry. It kind of is disarming for me because you're not fueling that emotion, right? It's like you're diffusing the emotion. So that's the way for me to coach the other, not necessarily from a perspective of you should be mindful, but my action has a lot of impact on the other person's action.
Yeah, and that's what I was leading toward, just modeling the behavior. I don't think I would say that because they would probably tell me this negotiation's over. But I think and how many times I know in my personal life and my professional life when the other person's going off, I just really bring myself down, calm my energy, slow my tone, and they follow because if I'm all I do is escalate it when I meet them where they're at up there. I'm trying to bring them down without saying it, and just even lower my voice that it's going to force them to calm down to hear what I have to say.
Yes. It's almost like you're putting a mirror in
Mm,
front of them. And on this side of the mirror, you have a calm entity, in control. You're not losing your cool. And it's very attracting for the other person, especially when you come with empathy, right?
mhm.
Uh, People are emotional for many reasons. And that doesn't mean that it's about us personally, right? Somebody can have a bad day, they can have some emergency in their family, and they're coming to the negotiation and they're super, super angry. But the ability to just acknowledge that the person in front of me can be in pain, can be in fear, can be, they have their own emotions. So just for me to relax and offer an anchor, if you want, about we're not going to put oil on the fuel here, we're not going to add to the emotion, but just diffusing the emotion. If we do that in a nice way, we're building trust, because people that are emotional, they don't trust themselves and they don't trust you, right?
Yeah.
So the ability to just build trust and establish a relationship, I think that's really powerful.
Well, I think trust is imperative in any kind of partnerships and sales, and I think even when you're saying like I understand you, there's an authenticity piece that also has to be there. It's not like yeah, I'm sorry you feel that way. If it's not authentic, that it's over there too because they're not going to feel it. But the sincerity is
Exactly.
missing. So
Exactly. Yeah.
I think that's key, and I just think the empathy piece. What strikes me there is I would say the first lesson I learned in my sales career many years ago was not to take it personally. And I did when I started because I was like, they didn't want me and, they didn't want my product. And I did take it personally. But I think now the importance of just separating that, labeling it what it is. Like that guy probably had a bad day, but it wasn't about me. And then I think detaching any blame or self-criticizing thoughts about it, because I think that's where that negative spiral comes in. And then you start encoding your brain with that and being like every time I negotiate, they do this, then I suck and I'm and then you lose trust and ability in yourself. So what are your thoughts on just kind of like that negative, because that's ego, right? That negative talk. And so maybe start if you could define what ego is, because I think we think it's us, but it's actually the voice that sounds like us. But how do you go like, I know what your job is and you're not serving me. So how do you turn that volume down?
Yeah. Well, first of all, you need to understand that ego is not the true us. Ego is our learned personality. Okay. Ego is very reacting, very fast, and is so fast that it's going to go back in our experience to see if it can shortcut the reaction, right? Doesn't assess the current moment. Like, did I meet a situation like that in the past? Okay, this is how I'm going to react. So basically, every time we feel out of control, every time we feel like we are reacting versus being proactive, and every time the driver is us comparing to somebody, right? We made a proposal, they rejected, I take it personal. Okay, well, it's my own self esteem, right? So I think the key is to understand that ego, it's not us. And there are other ways to behave. For example, for me, when I walk in a forest or watch a sunset, I can tell you that my ego is really quiet because I'm just in awe of that moment. I don't compare myself. I don't compare this night versus the previous night. I'm just there in the current moment.
Mhm.
And I think one of the strategy that can help people is to put themselves as an observer. Many coaching books are talking about going to the balcony, but really observing what's going on. For example, I'm observing that I'm angry. It's much easier to tackle than saying I'm angry,
Mhm.
right? So if I'm an observer, I'm detaching myself from that emotion, from that moment, right? So take the situation, somebody's yelling at us, rejecting a proposal. I'm observing that my chest is tightening, my jaw is grinding, my teeth are grinding, my breathing is shallowing. Why is that? Right? It's almost like I press the situation on pause, and I just take that moment for me while the other party is frozen. But
Mhm.
it's really about slowing down time and shifting our perspective from an observer's point of view.
I think that's fantastic. And as a coach, I do that a lot. And even when I'm looking inwardly and I think like if I'm going through something, I take it as if I'm a coaching client and I step outside of myself and go, Karen, like why do you think you're doing this? Like what advice would you give a client of yours? Because when you're in it, you're too emotionally connected to it. I love what you said about because I always say you have to slow down in order to speed up. And two questions here. One of them is I think when you said, when you look at negotiation, there's logic, there's structure, there's methodology, and those are all very tactical skills that you teach. But I think if you can heighten your awareness, even without further negotiation training, you're going to sharpen that knife in those three areas just by, as you said, pausing the room. It's like stopping game tape and go, okay, look at your shoulders, look at your and get reset, and all of a sudden, you're going in like as if you have a PhD in negotiations and you don't, but you're just so aware of your and in control. That's a good one. Not you're aware, but you're also not reactive. You're just going, I know what's going on here. I know that I was 3 steps ahead of myself because that damn ego needed to get into check. Pull it back. So I just love that. Maybe talk a little bit about like if you're in the moment, how do you if you start, because you can apply your methodology, but then you kind of revert back to old patterns. How do you kind of course correct in the moment that go, okay, pull it back? Like what are some thoughts and suggestions on how people could do that?
Yes, a really cool question here. So the first step, it's always happening in the preparation. Why is that? I'm preparing to go into a situation. I'm preparing to enter a difficult conversation. Well, maybe I make it difficult, right? The conversation, it's difficult from my point of view. So everything starts at the preparation step. And you're totally right. I could be skillless, but keep control of my emotion that will give me an upper end on the other person. Preparation is okay, plan for what if scenarios. What if somebody's interrupting me? How am I going to react? What if somebody's yelling at me? What if somebody's refusing my proposal? If you have the ability to experience those reject, those what if, that's awesome. But it's pretty difficult to do. People are going in their head, oh yeah, okay, I'll be cool, I'll be doing that. But when they are in the meeting or in a conversation, you know, the water's going overboard and they don't have any control. The first thing to understand is awareness. And people are getting angry in half a second, right? So what coaches are doing, it says, could we extend that half a second? Is there a sign that you can observe in yourself that you feel the carpet is going? It's, people are pulling the carpet. Most people don't have awareness. And the second step is to be aware after the situation and slowly work backward to as much as in real time as possible, right? So we're not suggesting people say in the midst of a crisis just go around and like, okay, let's be zen, let's meditate here. No, it's not going to happen. But we want to shorten the time of the awareness to the event, right? The first starting point, people are not aware. Are they aware after? Okay, great. That's a first step. And after that, we go from backward, coming back to the real time. And not all the situation are the same. So maybe we should start at in a situation where it's easier for us, right? Let's say I go in a customer where I have an amazing relationship where I don't feel I'm not in fear of losing that business, and maybe I can try that because it's a little bit more favorable from an environment perspective.
And do you think during those moments when you're kind of getting your awakening or your awareness, do you think it's coming from your audience's behavior or the way they're reacting? Or do you think you're looking inwardly and be like, wow, I just yelled there or I'm sweating? Like, where do you think it's coming from, the others or internally?
I think internally we react to triggers, or put that the other way around. The environment, the other people are triggering our emotional response.
Hmm.
And the problem with that is if I don't pay attention to it, if I go through life, the same patterns happen over, over, over. The same thing that, annoying me in a person, if I don't sit with it, the same annoyment will come from another person, another relation.
Mm.
So personally, we are triggered. Nobody's doing things to us. The big belief is you do that to me. No, we doing it to ourselves.
Hmm.
Because Karen, we can be side by side facing a situation. I'm reacting to it, and you're not. So it's not the outcome. It's not the environment or the other person. It's really us, how
Hmm.
we are triggered. And I see that oftentimes when I consult with my customer. They are emotionally involved in their negotiation, and I say, is that true that they have all the power? And they go, well, of course it is. Well, okay, let's figure out ways that you have more power. And now slowly it changed because they change your perspective, right?
Hmm.
So it's always us reacting to something or to another person. So it always starts with inside of us.
And do you think in your work does gender or experience, like a seasoned rep versus an unseasoned rep, does that come into it as well?
It could, of course, it could, but a rep with 40 years of experience will be pretty set in their behavior,
Yeah.
right? I see that in my class all the time. Younger people, older people. Older people are harder to change. Younger people might be more
Mhm.
open. However, as you're getting older, you should get wiser. So I don't know if there's a black or white answer to that. Is there an influence? Yes, totally. But I don't think the age or the seasoning or,
Mhm.
really matter that much. It's more about personal work.
Yeah. And, just in my own experience, I can say, it's timing. I think sometimes I look at like, why was I not ready to receive that message then? Someone's been telling me that same message and, forever. And so I was open to receiving it. But I think also, like, when you look at people, why are you repeating the same mistakes over and over? It's because they're not interrupting that cycle of awareness, as you said. And think about the blockages or like what could have been if they kind of stopped that skipping record, acknowledged it, got rid of it. Like their life could be they could be with somebody else, they could be doing something completely different. Like you just think it's kind of like that sliding door theory, like god, life could be so much different.
Yeah, it's everything we do, everything we react creates drama. And you can see that you watch a TV show, it's all drama, blah, blah, blah. People are having a lot of energy
Hmm.
for something really trivial.
Hmm.
When we are in that situation, it's never trivial because it's triggering us. But from an observer's perspective, does it really matter? Right?
Yeah.
Is that really the end of the day, the end of the world? Am I making things bigger than they are really are? And if you think about relationship and family, we're heading into the holiday season. People are happy to meet each other, but sometimes there's grudges from 5 years ago, and I don't want to talk to my sister or my brother because and we carry those pain, those hurtful moments with us today. and we're unable to go beyond that.
Yeah, no, I completely get that. And I just wrote a quote down here just to echo what you said about drama. It says, anxiety makes your ego feel safe.
Oh
So,
my God, it's
so
so
this is,
true.
that's from your book. So, think about when something's not a big deal. Our ego is going in that's normally a 2, it's raising it to a 10 till we get that fight or flight. And so we're creating drama. We're escalating the stakes that they don't need to be. Like, think about a negotiation. It could be a lot easier, but we're making a lot harder on ourselves because as soon as you get a little anxious, the ego just takes it and runs with it.
And yes, anxiety, it's an emotion, right? And imagine somebody that is going through a divorce, or somebody that went through a divorce. Is There's nothing about being rational. We're fighting for the dog, we're fighting for this
Mm,
just to hurt the other person. So most of us, when we are emotional, we made bad decisions.
mhm.
And when we negotiate, we have to make decision. Am I trading? Am I giving in? Am I going straight to my limit? Um, and sometimes we're prepared to accept bad deals just because we're afraid to lose face, right? So it's really it's really all about getting control of what we think we can control.
Yeah. And just to echo what you said, I had this earmarked in the book about bad deals and you leaning into our curiosity and ask yourself, like, why would I accept that? And the questions you had here are like, why are you prepared to accept a bad deal? What are you afraid of? What are you trying to protect by accepting a bad deal? And I can say, because we're going so fast, people don't stop to do that. And they will accept, if they went in there with that number, they'll accept way less than that. And I think, just to echo what you're saying and what I'm hearing is like, maybe there's an underlying reason there. Like, maybe that there's this insecurity in myself or self-worth or self-belief that I can't even ask for that 35% because you know what? I got cut from the basketball team in grade 12 and I suck. Like, there could be that is in our subconscious that we don't know is fueling us or preventing us from asking this very basic question.
Yes, actually, you're very truthful on that. It's the situation; it's a trigger, but behind that trigger, there's something really deep. And what I say in negotiation is, people are killing me when I say that. I say it's not about money. You're like, what?
Hmm.
I'm in sale. It's about money. Yes, the procurement is always trying to get the better price. I understand. But behind that, all of us, we have our personal motivation, our personal driver. Sometimes we're not aware of it, right? We need to make our bonus because we promise our family to get to do a trip next year, right? So it's unconscious, but the majority of our behavior behind that, there's a personal motivation. And the motivation can be to protect ourselves. The motivation can be to be loved, to be accepted, to be recognized, to be seen, to be appreciated, whatever. And negotiation, it's really a basket of emotion, right? People want to prove themselves. People are afraid to lose face internally. People don't want to disappoint their boss. People don't want to disappoint their customers, so they're coming with, not the greatest message. Well, maybe you're going to have a price increase. Every time we're coming with, gray and a gray zone like that, people are pushing back on us all the time.
Hmm.
So there is always something personal.
Hmm. And think about in the book, without giving away, when Alexis was having the conversation with Lucas and she found out what was why was he being a jerk? But I think that disarming the relationship for me, that was a turning point. Like, she took a moment to find out, like, what's actually in it for them,
Yes.
you know?
And we negotiate position in negotiation, right? A better access, better, commitment, volume, whatever. But behind it, there's always something else
Hmm.
that drives us to behave in a specific way.
And at what point during the negotiation, Gaetan, would you suggest somebody asking that question? Because I think if you ask it a little early and there's not really a rapport or trust established, you're going to get closed answers. So, what point do you think is a safe point, or a point that you're pretty much guaranteed that they'll give you a good response?
Well, you said it, Karen. It's all about trust. If I don't trust this relationship right now, I'm not going to open up to you, right? If I'm in sale and the other side don't trust me, we're going to be transactional at best. Trust for me, it's the number one thing to establish. How do you create trust? Well, you ask questions, but you listen. You pay attention to them. You try to understand their world. So it's like a continuum, slowly building trust. And for me, if I don't have trust, I cannot ask, what's your driver? What's your motivation, Karen? And
Yeah.
Karen will say, well, that's not your business
Yeah.
or whatever, right?
Hmm.
But as I develop trust over multiple meetings and we hit a place where it doesn't go well, now I can say, I can see that you are angry. I can see that you are upset. How can I help you, Karen, to look good internally? But I have to earn the right to ask those questions.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I'm coming not as trustworthy, people won't open up, right?
Hmm.
How long do you need to build trust? I met people in a restaurant and, strangers where I was pretty forthcoming, because I felt the chemistry. They were interested in me, right? Other time, I have a hard time to open up because I sense there's a hidden agenda.
Hmm.
So I don't know the exact time, Karen, but you need to be able to build trust first.
Hmm.
If you want to sell on price and features and benefits and that's it, fine. But it's not the earmark of a long, healthy relationship.
No, it's transactional. But what you said there about the trust for me is that spelled energy. Like you pick up on people's energy. And I heard you doing some mirroring and labeling there. Can you kind of give us a definition of what that is and what by doing that in negotiation, what it does to your audience?
Well, okay. I don't like the word labeling
Okay.
because if I'm labeling you, I'm putting you in a box. Okay. And there's a lot of people that don't like that. What I want to do is express what I observe. So it sounds like you are hungry. No, this is me perceiving that. Oh, no, you're totally wrong. Okay, great. So let's talk about that. And mirroring for me, it's very non threatening. So, for example, if I'm in a situation where I need to have access to the information from the other side to deliver the best proposal as possible, the other side doesn't want to open up with me because they're afraid, right? I can say something, looks like you don't trust me enough to share information. It's really assertive, but it's not threatening, right? Because I'm just with empathy putting a mirror on what I'm observing. And labeling is fine, that's a technical term, but I prefer just to share what I'm observing with the other person. And mirroring, it's we use that in coaching. It's like, it sounds like you are like that, am I correct? It sounds like this. And oftentimes, this is just enough to unlock that emotional charge. Not
Hmm.
always, but at least as a good beginning. And there are multiple studies in mindfulness that, mirroring behavior help to diffuse the emotion, right?
Hmm.
The right behavior, not the negative behavior, obviously. Um, but it's all about, I'm comfortable to call out what I'm observing. Looks like you're not prepared to share information with me. Looks like you're hungry. Would you prefer to postpone that meeting to another day?
Hmm.
Right? I'm showing a lot of empathy. I'm not coming in from my own sole agenda, but really us as an entity together toward an outcome.
Yeah, and I think doing that, it calls it out. Like they're thinking it, but you called it out. So I think that disarms them. But it also shows your others' focus because you're looking at them. You're like, well, what I'm picking up here is it feels to me, it sounds to me like this isn't sitting right with you. And I just think sometimes it invites the other person to go, oh no, 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 you know what? I just got a text. I'm actually good, and it might not actually be what it is. But how do you know it until you call it out in a respectful way?
Yeah, well, you don't.
Yeah.
And our ego might tell us, don't go there. You're going to upset the other person, right? A lot of people are afraid to probe, and I'm asking a question, I'm getting a vague answer, I'm just going to the next one.
I know.
People don't want to upset, they don't want to feel like they are lacking respect, so they don't dig.
Mm.
But this is our own fear that is, driving us. If you want to have a meaningful conversation, we need to understand what's going on. And
Mhm.
sometimes it's not easy. Sometimes it's really vulnerable to bring what's going on inside, or I know you have a lot of pressure internally. Is there a way I can help you? Maybe the other person will go, no, you cannot help me, but it's just self defense. But really, it's the ability to it's not the ability to create a win-win, but it's the ability to demonstrate that I care about you.
Mhm.
I'm not only here for me,
Mhm.
right? That's a big difference for me in both in sales and negotiation.
Mhm. And I think when most people, one of the biggest things I see is they go into negotiations thinking what they want and what their walkaways are and their points, but have they even considered what's important to the other person?
Totally, totally. Most people don't even spend a single minute thinking about the other side. And worse, Karen, they come with a proposal to the table before meeting the other party.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah.
So imagine the scene. I'm coming to you. We never met or barely, and I say, I know exactly what's drive you in life, Karen. And you'll
Mm.
go, really? How do you know that? You haven't talked to me, right? A lot of people in negotiation, that's what they do. They already prepare a proposal before understanding the other side's pain point, constraint, motivation, driver. One of my best questions to ask is what keeps you awake at night? Because all of us, we wish something will happen in the right form, a right, order. Also wish to avoid that this will happen. Those are the questions that are directed to the person, not
Yeah.
the title, not the role, the person.
And I think when you go in like that, it's arrogance, right? And I think it happens unfortunately in sales with salespeople at all stages, not that in the negotiation. Like pitching before you even know if they have a problem or if you can solve it. And and it's so me focused that it's like that's why sales still isn't recognized as a profession because there's a lot of people just doing that. And I'm just thinking like how do you even know if this problem is worth solving? How do you know? And they're leading with, ego and arrogance and it just turns the other party off.
Yeah. Well, the favorite tool of ego is persuasion. Why?
Yes.
Because when we persuade people, there's a chance I can be right. So I'm powerful, I'm in control, I have control over you. And for as long as I remember reading book, sale is all about persuading, right? And if you're a good persuader, you're going to turn the argument with the other person's drives and motivation. But it requires an art to be a good persuader. Most people persuade, oh, here's me, here's my product, here's my solution, here's why you should buy it.
Mhm.
I do a lot of work with pharma, right? Drugs company. And I don't know if I should say that here, but this entire industry is based on persuasion. Here's my product. Here's my clinical profile. Here's why my product is such the best product in the world. But guess what? On the receiving end, people that negotiate access on formulary, payers, whatever, they hear that 10 times a day, 240 days per year. So when you come with persuasion, oh, my product is so good, doc, you should prescribe my product. It's like, yeah, yeah, yeah. Another person saying exactly features and benefit. You don't care about my world, right? And that's a big difference. People, they pretend they care, obviously, but their action doesn't tell me that they care.
Mhm. And imagine just to pattern interrupt there if they actually had an idea of what the physician cared about or the drug, whoever their audience is, and just said, like, I know this is important to you. So imagine, how this could help you achieve that. And also, and then something personal. And like A, they're gonna look and sound different from everyone else. So just in that in themselves, they've stood out. but the other person feels heard and valued. It's like you've actually taken time to consider like what my day-to-day goes through and how this might make prescribing a little bit different. Might just, it's just very others focused.
Yes, it's about the in. So I'm going back to creating an intent. What's my intent going into that sales pitch? What's
Mhm.
my intent going into that negotiation? What's my intent having an argument with my spouse? I don't probably have the time to have that question, but it's all about the intent. And if people are honest, the answer is always about me getting in
Mhm.
control, me getting my point across, me becoming, advantage in that conversation, me having the upper end.
Mhm.
But people won't say that. People say, well, that's the way to connect with customers. This is what I've been told by my marketers. This is what I've been told by my brand people. But the reality is this behavior, it's fueled by our ego. We like to be right.
Mhm.
And if I'm right, you're wrong, I'm better, stronger than you, I have a better chance to survive. That's all about survival.
But you know what, Gaetan, I can remember in my career winning and not feeling good about it. And that's when you're like, "But we won." But you're like, "But something like but they lost." And I think that zero sum rule shouldn't be in order for us to win, you have to lose. And I just remember having that feeling and just being like, "That's not fair."
Yes. And it's you bring a very good point, Karen, because sometimes the corporate culture
Hmm.
is dictating that behavior, right? Get a deal at any cost because we need revenue. And when you feel that disconnect, like you just expressed, you actually listen to your body. You are listening to, I don't feel good. And why is that? Because it feels like we took the upper end, blah, blah, blah. But the real nugget in that is, why is that a trigger for you? Because now that's a positive trigger, right? I don't feel it's fair. Okay, well, why is that? What's going on? Where is that coming from?
Mhm.
And eventually, if your own personality, your culture, your own culture doesn't fit with the corporate culture, the
Mhm.
decision is, okay, should I stay or should I leave?
Mhm.
Because we have choice in our career, but we also have choice to behave. But sometimes people need help, right? It's either a big event in life that changed priority, or you meet a coach or you meet a friend, they point out things to you and you're like, oh, okay. You don't want to admit it, but you're right.
Yeah.
But sometimes people need help just to see what they don't see.
And that's the job of a coach, but I think that first step is how do you become aware enough or recognize that there's a problem enough or what these blind spots are doing to get a coach in the first place, because I think that otherwise you're stuck in the hamster wheel. And I do want to get into your 4 C's, but before that, last question here is just on this corporate culture is, how what message would you have for sales leaders, because they're the one, I mean, culture is defined, they define it, and then the team owns it, but like how do you what message do you have to them of just being mindful of just what I shared? Because I'm sure there's other people, and it kind of comes down to your moral compass here. Like, are we a company that will win at all cost? But then the message we're giving our customers is we're partners. It's like, no, you're not. You just want to take us to the cleaner. So where is that incongruency? So what would you say to those leaders to say, like, if you want your reps to be true to themselves and really to be true to the company, like there's a disconnect there. So what would you say to them around that?
Yeah, that's a great question. Actually, I wrote a blog about leadership. People have to start with themselves. We can blame others. We're very quick to blame others. I hear that all the time. It's not my fault. Was not my above my pay grade. But really, we need to take control of our own life if we want people around us to do the same thing. Because as a leader, I can say one thing, but my energy, my emotion says the opposite. Nobody's going to follow me, right? The problem with leadership, Karen, is that most people are getting in leadership for the wrong reason, right? Leadership is about serving other people. But what we see often, people are going into leadership because of them. It's going to give them prestige, money, reputation, whatever, whatever. So I think it starts with ourselves asking question. Is it the right thing? Am I aligned with those figures? Do we want to have more money? Do I want to make my bonus? But again, I'm going back to you don't know what you don't know. And a lot of leaders are just in the motion, like we were talking earlier, one crisis after a crisis, putting out fire and don't really have the time to think. And I think the ability to slow down time, like we were talking earlier, it's also a powerful tool for any leadership, right? Slow down. What's going on in myself? Am I conflicted or not? Am I aligned? Why not? And starting their own introspection if you want. But people don't have time for that. It's like one after chasing something else. So the ability to just slow down will be a good recommendation for anybody in leadership as a
Hmm.
starting point.
And I agree with that. And some of my clients, Gaetan, I do leadership coaching as well, is initially they like the speed because it's forcing them not to deal. And there's power in that speed. It's like, "Oh, I'm busy, I'm in demand." And that's ego. But once they start working with me and we're slowing things down, the curtain's revealing and they're like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe I was doing that." But I just think if a trigger or something didn't happen to connect us, that speed would be continuing, and you're just operating. It's like if someone played back the video of your day, you would be like, "That was me? I don't even like I'm so out of body here."
Yes, yes, totally. And sometimes you need somebody else to come and tell you,
Mhm.
right? But as you said earlier, there's no way coaching people will work if that person is not open to
Yeah.
receive
Yeah.
a different perspective, because it's all about that,
Yeah.
presenting a different perspective.
Mhm. Yeah, no, for sure. Now, I'm going to put this on here. This is a little framework of yours. So, for those who are watching, you'll see the four C's, but there's five here. So, Gaetan, would you kind of just walk us through this? And you can, keep it to the detail that you like. But, it's all in this book. So, for me, I can say, having read the book, I apply this to everything. And the irony is, when I started reading it, I was actually going through a negotiation, and I really looked at the other person and their side and what their motivations was. And it made me think about it in a way like what I wanted, I tailored it to what their need was and what they wanted. And it just made it so a way easier activity because it wasn't, wasn't coming in leading with me. It's like I've considered what what you want as personal and as an organization. And then it was just so the loop was connected. So I can say that I apply this in my whole life, but maybe just quickly walk us through the C's here.
Well, thank you for bringing that up. This is not a book about negotiation, interestingly enough. It's a book about mindfulness in negotiation situation where ego can be triggered. So if we look at that premise, we can remove where in negotiation situation and replace that sales negotiation, sales situation, conversation with a loved one, argument with somebody, right? So you can replace that setup by anything we have in life. And yes, the book talks about a negotiation. There's a story in the book as well. But you can remove the negotiation, commercial negotiation, and think about negotiation with ourselves, negotiating with loved one. We do that 10, 15 times a day. So that methodology, Karen, it's the result of me doing work on myself. This is not something from a book. This is not about a methodology to negotiate. It's really a model using four pillars of mindfulness to help us reacting, behaving differently. So it's a play on words. It's called C for you, right? The four C's for you. And the first C is to really connect with yourself. Slow down time. Bring our focus to ourselves. A lot of leaders feel they are running on a treadmill. There's never ends. Like run, 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 run. Just take a moment, just connect with yourself. Take a deep breath, change the muscle in your shoulder to do something. Once we just mute the outside world, now we can go to the second C, which is really scary and powerful. The second C is curiosity. Be curious about what's going on. And one of the way to feel less threatened is to put ourselves as an observer. I sense that my chest is tightening. I sense that my jaw is going to, I'm grinding my teeth. And just be curious why that is. And the ability here with C2 Karen is to go as deep as we feel we need to go. So for people scary, they might say, why am I feeling angry? Because, great, maybe that's the first day. But it's not going to help us because we haven't touched about the deeper stuff. So curiosity, it's about peeling the onion one layer at a time. And there's no rush to do C2. It could take a day, it could take a year or a life, a lifetime, right? But the more we peel the onion, the more we understand the real reason why we're getting triggered.
Hmm.
And as we go deeper, we might connect with negative emotion like shame, like judgment, like criticizing ourselves, like other emotions. So the third C is compassion toward ourselves. And there's a saying, Karen, that says if you're not able to have compassion for yourself, there's no way you can have compassion for other people. So when we do that kind of introspection, we need to be gentle with ourselves. I can be ashamed of myself because I thought I was a good negotiator and I'm not. I could be, you know, judging myself because I raised my kid this way, and in reality, I realized that, it was all my ego, trying to prove myself. So the third C, it's absolutely crucial because as personal growth shows up, it will never get anchored with self judgment, with self hatred, right? So we need to allow ourselves to just, okay, I'm not as good as I thought I was. I suck at this or whatever,
Hmm.
and that's okay. There's nobody else is judging what we're feeling inside. So we need to be really acknowledge that gentleness, that compassion, and only then C4 will show up as what else is there. And in my book, Karen, I have a couple of questions about changing the reality. What if there was another option? What if we could react differently? Is that true? Am I hanging to something by just focusing on my belief? If I tell the other party that they're right, is that making me wrong? And really exploring what else can I do? And people say, well, how do you know when it's the right choice to do? The right choice comes from a place of knowing. You just know in your heart that's the right choice to do. You're not trying to compare yourself with others. The motivation is coming from inside of you. It's not coming, if somebody else is there, I should do. That's the wrong choice. We're back to ego. So we
Hmm.
have to go back to the first C and re enter again because ego is going to work very hard to avoid us peeling the onion on its own structure. And yes, it's a C for you, but actually, the fifth one, like you put on the screen, it's like we've done some hard work here. So let's celebrate this movement forward, right? Because this is our journey. Our journey is to grow, is to evolve. And people always cheers for the end game or the objective, but in this case, is cheering us up about the movement we've just done toward taking control of our own emotion.
Hmm. Well, I can say it's had a huge impact on me reading it. And I would say celebrate between each of those stages for just leaning into that vulnerability and that awareness.
So yeah,
W-
yeah,
w-
totally.
One thing I love, first of all, when you said the compassion and you think I suck, your audience probably didn't think you sucked. So again, we're our own worst self critics. So I think, we probably make it a lot worse than it is. But what struck me the most, because I again, this can apply to life, but what it struck me is a really important one in negotiation is that change. And think about when you're backed into a corner and they're like, look, I tell you, either go for the, 20% in 2 year, and then you're given an A or B situation. If you're in ego and you're sweating and you're unaware, you're not able to go, hang on a minute. What about a third option here? Like, why do I have to be pigeonholed into this? Like, let's just take a break here, pause, and if you can, slow everything down, man, the third one could be a game changer for both parties. But I think that doesn't happen.
Yes. Well, you bring a very good point, and I didn't expect to talk about that, but here's a real problem in negotiation. People often confuse strategy with objective. So I'll give you an example. A lot of clients negotiate with procurement. Procurement think their objective is to get the best price possible. But in reality, if you really think about it, it's a strategy to accomplish something else. And the something else is increasing my margin or increasing my profitability, right? I'm always asking, what are you trying to do with that price reduction? And it sounds like a redundant a question or a question that it's not powerful enough. But if somebody says, I need to improve my margin, I'm pretty sure I can come up with different ideas to help my customer to improve their margin without having them to come in my pocket.
Hmm.
So if I'm in my ego, I look at the demand. I need you to give me more, a better price, or more discount. And I think that's the end of the game. And I'm unable to change my view of that situation versus if I'm curious, not in my ego, in just trying to understand, help me, Karen, to understand what are you trying to achieve with that? They might not be forthcoming, but there's what I'm telling you is people think the strategy, the objective, it's what they are hearing. Mindful negotiation is don't take for full value what people are asking you for.
Hmm.
There's always something behind it.
Yeah.
And you want to tackle what's the behind it because getting money in my pocket, it's not an objective. It's a strategy to achieve something else.
Hmm.
And we are afraid to ask those questions in negotiation because we don't want to upset the other side. We don't want to look like we are arrogant or cornering them. But my answer is always I'm trying to get the best possible proposal for you. Until I understand the real pain point or the real driver, whatever proposal I'm going to come up with, it's not going to help you.
Yeah. I always say, what's the question behind the question? Even, it's usually the five whys because the first one's never the real one. And even just that emotional connection to it. Like, why is this important to you, Gaetan? Like, I know you work for company X, but what do you personally have to gain from this? And even objections, the first one. It's like, why did you're just testing me here. Like, if you get to the three or four, you realize it's probably nothing. But I think what I'm hearing and what I've seen in my own practice is ego takes over. And our the brain's job is to protect ourselves and keep it safe, right? So we don't want to push because we're like, oh my god, if we dig deeper for impact, if we have to ask them, about their current, our competitor that they're currently using, they're going to get mad. It's like, that's, you're projecting your fear onto them. That's a normal question they will ask you, but you've concocted this crazy idea, fear laden in your head, and that's why you're not going for it. And that's why I think deals stall, is because you don't ever get to impact or pain or the real root of it because we're afraid.
Yes, we're afraid. And when the situation doesn't go as planned, our ego is telling us, get out
Yeah.
of that situation as soon as possible. Basically meaning what? Don't ask too much question. Don't dig a hole, right? Don't push back. Don't be an asshole. Don't do this and get out.
Hmm.
Well, it's a fear-driven behavior, but that means that we're going to cut corner. We're going to offer concession. We're going to do a lot of things to help us or help our ego to feel more secure. Well, in reality, if you were able to slow down and say, all right, no, there's no rush for me to get out of here. I'm totally in control. Actually, I'm going to use creativity, like you were saying earlier. Is there another option?
Mm.
Mr. Customer, could we co create a solution?
Mm.
I might feel ashamed that I don't have a full solution, but are you willing to co create one? Right? That's totally against my ego because my ego wants me to be right. If I
Mm.
co create, I'm just telling everybody that I was not that good as I thought. But maybe that's the best way to come to a conclusion.
Oh gosh, of course it is. And I mean, co-creation is the best form. But even think about what I just thought about there as leaders, and think about when they're coming up and they're giving off the impression that they know everything and they've done this. And it's like once you can disarm and celebrate your failures that you always, obviously it was a journey to get where you were, but just saying like, yeah, I was in your shoes too. And can I tell you like what you shared in your book, like that I suck too. And this is how I messed up. But like that's going to build trust. You're going to be relatable to your team. And I think when you come up there and you're like, oh, I've got it all figured out, you're not relatable because people are like, well, I don't. So you're clearly not a good fit for me.
Well, it goes back to the intent, right? So if I'm going to leadership to prove myself, I don't necessarily need to build trust. Like I can prove myself, I can demonstrate that I'm the most brilliant, intelligent, smart, and as long as you believe me, I don't need you to trust me, right?
Mhm.
So it goes back to the intent, and in sales and management and relationship and communication. If I'm placing myself bigger than you or smaller than you, it will totally change the dynamic of that conversation. And sometimes it's going too far too fast, and it's hard to take everything back. Um, but it's just going back about awareness and about asking, why am I behaving the way I'm behaving today?
Mhm.
Why do I need to prove myself? Why do I need to do that? And be curious until we reach something that really resonate with us.
Yeah. And the breakthroughs that can happen when you do that are, life changing, but the sad thing is it's not for everybody, and a lot of people unfortunately won't do this, and they're going to not see the benefit. But you know what? We're not for everybody, right? I say we because I'm in the mindset of that too, but it's not going to be for everybody. Um, One word you said there, Gaetan, with concessions, and think about like if you want change, like think about where you're going to hit corporate where it hurts, and that's when you're putting your team in, and they're conceding right away. And I can just share when I was 25, I was in a negotiation and I was very junior, and they brought two other people in. And the minute we started the meeting, we had our plan. They immediately gave like our final straw. And I'm the 25-year-old. I'm like, what did you guys do? You totally, you know, you just caved immediately. And I thought, what? I'm the kid here. And I knew to hold tight. And so, like, when people do that, like, can you walk us through like why they're doing that?
Yeah, it's an interesting behavior. So in life, you can be focused on business or people, right? If you're very good, you can marry both. Am I protecting the relationship? Is it at the price of my business outcome? Or am I only focused on the business? I don't care about people. The leaders, VP, C suite, they're the worst negotiator. Why? Because they're using persuasion a lot and they have control to support their position. When I bring my boss to an account, what's the only objective for my boss? Save the relationship, move on to the next thing. Business outcome, we spend 6 months planning and debriefing, and what are we going to do? Doesn't matter anymore. In that moment, our boss wants to look as the hero. And the hero means I'm going to save that relationship and I need to take a plane for my next meeting, right? So they want to look as a hero. They want to close. So the closing step for a leader is very, very rewarding because you demonstrate that you're the best, they empower. So their objective is be the hero. I'm closing, I save the relationship, move on.
Mm.
And oftentimes it's against everything we're going to say, because if the other side is a little bit clever, observe that dynamic, next year they're going to ask your boss again and they're going to do the same thing. And now we just created a precedent,
Yep.
and it's hard to stop a precedent when it's already expected, right? So for me, it's all about, I need you, boss, and this is how you can help me. I can close a deal by myself. I don't need you to come to close a deal. This is when I need you if we go above my authority level. But it will be really nice if you can trade against something.
And that's that give get that at that level usually doesn't happen because I think
It doesn't happen.
they get rewarded as you said, but it's their ego that gets rewarded because they flew in, they're the hero. But I think also that disempowers your rep. That's their job.
Oh, totally. Totally. And who do you think the customer is going to call
I
next time they
know.
have a big problem or
Exactly.
something strategic they want to talk about?
Yeah.
But again, the leader in that moment doesn't care about the rep, doesn't care about the impact. Their focus is on themselves. There's a problem. I'm going to solve that problem. I'm going to be a hero. There's collateral damage with the rep, but hey, everybody does that. Fine.
Mm-hmm.
Suck it up and next time be better, right? But the rep doesn't learn. There's a credibility issue, and there's also integrity issue, because now the boss just give up a concession that we said we were not prepared to give up, but in the moment emotion was too strong and he wanted to look good and just like, yeah, let's do it.
But think about in the debrief back at head office. Oh, the story will change, and they were cornering us, and totally a different story. And the rep could be like, "No, you just caved because your ego got the better of you."
Well, first of all, the rep will never say that to the boss, right?
Exactly.
Because it's too scary. And second thing is the boss will never be open to be challenged on their behavior, right?
Hmm.
If I'm an outsider or coach and I ask what happened, I give up. Did you tell me what were the signs that will tell you that you have to do that? Oh, no, that's different. But because I'm an outsider, but because I'm a coach, but because I have credibility. The rep has none of
Yeah.
that, right?
Yeah.
So it's touchy because debrief in those situations will be very helpful to understand what happened, but in most cases, there's no debrief.
There is, well, I don't see any either, but even what happened, that's lagging. But like leading indicators is what, and in the book you talk about Alexis when she had to understand the emotion, she had to relive it, and that was a tough thing. But also, what did those emotions trigger in her body physically, and what were they responding to? And I think that was just really working that awareness muscle that she can become aware of that in certain situations. Not only is the bigger underlying picture here, like maybe I had a problem from childhood, but just knowing that like when they did that, that's what I did, right? And just that awareness that it's not there. And I think those debriefs they don't happen. But if they did, they could look at there was steps leading. Like if you reverse engineer that, like I could predict that that was going to happen because when they said this, you got that tit for tat, and you had a chance to pull back, connect, slow down, and you might have your next play might have been a little bit different, but you didn't.
But you see, Karen, what you're describing is you observing the story,
Mm.
right? So
Hmm.
you're not there emotionally, you're not there. So it's easy to look at the negotiation from the outside looking in. And every corporate people I know, they don't trust their sales rep. They're doing their best job because oh, what the heck? Why do we have to do that? Because they don't understand. But when we are in that moment, we're losing that clarity. We're losing that distance. And it goes back to what you and I were talking earlier, the ability to slow down, distance yourself. Because I can tell you anything about other people, but when it's about me,
Oh, I know.
I'm scared to lose my customer,
Yeah.
right? It's like any sales rep. I'm not. It's not making me, more. I'm more equipped, yes, but that doesn't mean that I don't have any fear or anxiety of losing a customer over a bad news or telling them, you know what, it's too late in the fourth quarter. I cannot do anything for you this year.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean I don't have emotion.
No.
but it's just my ability to say, all right, is that true? Karen, hear me out here and tell me if I'm coming from the right place or not. I'm scared. Okay, Gaetan, that's okay. Because you know the observer, and now I'm stuck in that emotion, right? So that's a dynamic here.
And it definitely is easier to coach from the outside when it's not you. But I think anticipating those emotions and knowing the triggers and the response, like when I'm going to, my husband bought a truck and it was the worst experience ever. Car salespeople, I don't know, the stereotype is kind of true in that industry, but I had to, I knew after the first call when my trigger was going to go up. And I thought, I'm going to kill this deal because they're going to admit me, but I started recognizing when they were saying things, and I really applied this technique to how do I calm it, and I de-escalated, I brought it down, and I could actually hear myself think, and I did come up with another option that I can tell you I would 100% not have seen because I was seeing red.
Well, this is a great example of slowing down,
Mhm.
getting clarity, and probably putting yourself from an observer's perspective, maybe consciously or not. That gives you a different perspective on a potential outcome.
Yeah, no, it did, and, okay, well, listen, we could talk for forever on this. So, just a bit of a summary here. We really talked about that first preparation phase and the awareness, and really becoming aware before you go in, because the tactical. We didn't really get into the negotiation steps or anything, but I think the importance here is being mindful of your own emotions, what they're telling us, so that we can lead with intention, not be reactive, and have a more meaningful, productive negotiation that doesn't leave you feeling like I won and you lost.
Mm, yes, and I hope the book I wrote kind of becoming a coach whispering in the earbuds of the readers, preparing for that in advance. This is awesome, but we all know once we're in the midst of the situation, it's a different ball game. So my hope is that methodology will help people in the moment slowly bringing their reaction in real time and giving them a chance in the moment to pivot and change perspective.
Absolutely. Oh, Gaetan, if people are interested in learning more about you, I'll include where they can buy the book. Where's the best way for them to connect or reach out to you?
On LinkedIn, I'm there, no problem. I have also a website, www.navigatesgroup.com. So www.navigatesgroup.com.
Excellent. Well, again, thank you so much. And huge fan of the book. Happy to write a review because it really did awaken me. So thank you again for sharing your wisdom, your expertise, and really just that awareness and mindfulness. Because I think it made me a better wife, a better mother, a better businesswoman, and just an overall, better, calmer person. So I thank you.
Oh, thank you very much for having me on the show, and it's been a pleasure.